Hey everybody, welcome to the Huffman Basketball Podcast. Today I got John Evans. John Evans is my first cousin. I've been an athlete his whole life. College soccer player, MVP. Was one of the best soccer players I ever played with growing up. Um, wasn't the fastest player, wasn't the most athletic player, but just was a beast on the soccer field. And now he's got into sports psychology. He's a PhD. Really though, John, your ego is just out of control right now. I can feel it. You're just so confident in this conversation. I feel it. I feel like you're going to enlighten me today. I'm super excited. So thanks for coming on.
No, I appreciate that, Trevor, and I think you're right. Like, I think it is an objective fact that I was almost never the most athletic person on a field. But I will say that, and this is probably why I chose to pursue sports psychology, is I do feel like I had just a high level of consistent performance because I was really able to manage the more mental, emotional side of the game, um,
Yeah.
and leverage that to do well.
Yeah. Most parents and athletes out there are not, maybe they don't have the background or the context to, maybe they're a new parent, their kid loves sports, they're just getting into this. Let's just dive right into this parent athlete relationship. Cause I think this is one of the things parents call me all the time. Like, oh, I got a kid who I was going to specialize. He's going to be all state and he's going to win the state championship. He's 7. I'm like, he's
Mm-hmm.
7. Just let the kid love the sport like at that age. But kind of talk to me about some of the things you've seen as a sports psychologist working with a lot of athletes and parents, and just some of the patterns, negative patterns, and then we go into some of the maybe the antidotes for some of those uh, bad stuff going on.
Yeah, I think it's so. I think first of all, I have to, and as you know, I have an almost 7-year-old myself, son, who loves to play soccer. But I'll hit you with some of the evidence and the theory just for a second. And the first thing is that you're right. At that age, at the ages of 5, 6, 7, even 8, 9, dare I say 10, there's a spectrum between what we call deliberate play and deliberate practice. Right? When they are that those earlier ages, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 for sure, deliberate play and just gaining a love for the game, um, you know, just going out there and just being able to run around and kick the ball and compete and learn how to
Or
uh,
dribble.
or dribble, right? Um, as a good friend of mine said, a pass is just a bad dribble. Uh, you know, that's what's most important, right? You want to get that foundation that they enjoy being out there.
Yeah.
And it's I'll throw out another term, and it's the difference between what we call structured learning or structured skill building and guided discovery. Like, I want at that age just go out there and like feel what it's like to kick the ball with your toe versus with the instep or with the side of your foot.
Yeah.
Where does it go? Does it, is it better one way? Is it better the other way? Does it hurt one way? Like, what do you like to do? So having
What if,
them figure that
but
kind of
what if
stuff
a
out is
kid
important.
like I've heard this, not to interrupt you, but I'm interrupting
Yeah.
you. By the way, I forgot to say Blend Health. Thank you for your marketing sponsorship, John Evans, Blend Health. You guys will see all our business marketing sponsors in the show notes. So check out John at Blend Health if you guys ever need any help with your athletes. What about the kid that's out picking dandelions? They're just like looking around, not engaged, not having, not really not even maybe they're new to the sport, but there are a lot of kids who are also just like ambivalent, like they don't even know what's happening or it.
Mhm.
What do you say to those, the parents who are, come on, get engaged?
Well, I think one of two things you got to ask. We have to be every um everything I've listened to recently. I've listened to a couple of new podcasts um, on sport and development and youth in particular. Everything says that even from an early age, if it's not like the recipe is, it has to be athlete led. And so if you ask the kid, like, do you want to be out here on the field? Like, is this something that you're having fun doing? If the answer is yes, then you can say, okay, well, maybe we can do that. Let's try this. Give them some ideas
Mm-hmm.
on ways to have more fun. If they're like, no, I really don't want to be doing this, then you have to. Then that gets even tougher, right? Do you force them, until they until they make them enjoy it, or do you let them quit? Just anecdotally for myself, we will always give Jack, our son, the option. But once he commits and says, yeah, I'm going to do this, we're playing this season out or
Yeah.
this session.
Yeah.
And we're going to, challenge him. I think, one of the things is like, we want to challenge people, encourage and support, and then challenge the magic number that this, famous sports psychologist, Michael Gervais, who worked with the Seattle Seahawks, wrote a book with Pete Carroll, says is like 15%. Like challenge them 15% outside their comfort zone. Whatever that means, that's super ambiguous. But having support and challenge together. And so in that situation, I think that's basically the best you can do, is allow it to be athlete or kid led, and encourage and challenge and provide ideas. But ultimately, trying to make them do something at that age is not likely to end up well.
Right. And I think we touched on this before about, there's a lot of parents, a lot of passionate athletes out there. Okay. I was one of those kids, but I didn't specialize in basketball just because I was passionate about it. I played soccer, I ran track, I tried football, I played basketball and in season. And then, it was kind of up to me, and say like, well, my dad would always challenge me, like, what is greatness? What, you want to be great at basketball? I'm like, yeah, I want to be better than my older brother, like, so, he helped me get kind of clear on kind of what I wanted to do. My ego needed to be great at basketball. So, okay, well, what motivates you, Trevor, to be great? So I started reading books on Larry Bird and Isaiah Thomas and Magic Johnson. And
Fab Five.
I saw Fab Five, best book ever written, Mitch Albom's shout out. So I started to look at all these greats and say, well, I'm not even doing what they're doing, as like what they practice, how much they play, how much, they just had such a voracious passion for the game that it really changed their behavior. Right. And so my behavior started changing as I started learning and going deeper, but it was really on me. My dad helped facilitate that and ask me questions like, hey, let's draw out kind of your vision for this year. What do you see happening, individually? How good do you want to be, 3-5 years from now, that long-term North Star? Do you want to play in varsity?
When do you remember that starting though? Like what age?
It was like 7th grade, 8th grade.
Okay. That
makes sense. But like in the beginning, it was just playing. My dad would put me in these. I think planting the seeds is really something I would, think is a great idea. Like take your kid to a Pistons game or a Michigan State or Michigan game or a D1 game. Get them, like, go early to the game. Go watch the college kids. Like, what are they doing as they warm up? All those little processes. Just don't go to the game. Go early and check out what those players are doing to develop. And I think that was something my dad did a really good job of. Specialization, we were arguing in Spain, kids are playing soccer since they're 3-4. And that's why they're so dominant, these European soccer teams. What's in your opinion, the argument for specializing early, like a European soccer team or even Serbian basketball? You look at Serbian basketball, these kids are in the gym, from 5, 6, 7, 8, and they have this very, very robust player development and system of development. For an American parent looking for more, kind of talk about the balancing between specialization and allowing, that freedom to try this stuff.
Okay. So first I'm going to hit 2 quick points based on what you just talked about.
Yeah, that was a long sentence. That was a long sentence on my
No, it was good. I'm going to hit the specialization piece, but I think, and it'll connect too, hopefully. But one of the things you brought up that I think often gets a bum rap is social comparison. Right? You talked about, like, I'm going to read about Larry Bird. I'm going to read about Jordan. I'm going to read about Chris Webber and Jalen Rose and those guys. I'm going to read about what they did. And then I'm going to mimic it. Then I'm going to, okay, if that's what they did, maybe I can do that too. That's social comparison. Social comparison isn't an evil thing. Right? And social media provides all sorts of ways of engaging in that social comparison. I mean, I tell people this all the time, and I'll use both of us as an example. When we growing up in Petoskey, Michigan in the mid to late 90s, if we wanted to do social comparison, like, we could check the Traverse City Record Eagle, or like
Petoskey News Review,
to like News Review, or Kid in Charlevoix, or Grayling.
Why is his picture in there and not mine?
Right. Like, but that was it. That was the extent, right?
Yeah.
Now athletes can compare themselves to a basketball player in Serbia or a soccer player in Barcelona
Mm-hmm.
or, a soccer player in Argentina. And what are they doing at age 8? I just saw a video of Messi's kid, like just juking people out. Well, I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, Jack's not doing that. So, we have this availability for this social that really is overwhelming and can be toxic. But I think social comparison gets a bum rap, and you
Mm.
can use it in a way that's facilitative if you do it the way that you did. The other thing that you said that I want to talk about is like planting seeds, right? And this gets into a theory of parenting that differentiates what we call carpenter parents and gardener parents. Right?
Whoa.
A carpenter parent is like, okay, I can mold this kid exactly. We're gonna straight lines, all the pieces are exact. This is how we're gonna build this athlete or this student or this violin player, and I'm gonna do it in a very structured, exact way. Or the gardener parent's like, look, I'm just gonna plant all these seeds, and I am gonna plant some, knowing that some need more sunlight, some need more shade, but ultimately what grows is going to grow, and this plant might do better, or this interest or value might develop in this kid, but I'm just going to plant these seeds.
Mm-hmm.
So and it's not black and white. You're not in a box as a carpenter parent or a gardener parent. You can be kind of overlap and be a little bit of both, but just two different methods of parenting that have pluses and minuses, and people can go on and kind of read about more about that if they want into detail. But I think those are important, like the social comparison piece, the type of parent, like that gardener, carpenter parent
What kind of
piece.
parent are you? You're definitely a gardener.
I think I am. I try.
You're in the
Right.
middle.
There's
Yeah.
there's certainly ways, and we can get into this too. My the methodology that I try most often is when I discipline or correct or criticize Jack. It's about the value of competition or respect or kindness or generosity. It's not about the behavior that just occurred. He will never come off a soccer field and I'll be like, oh, you didn't run hard enough. You didn't score any goals. I'm going to be like, listen, did you feel like you worked as hard as you could have? Were you being competitive out there? And now we're talking about a value that
Mm-hmm.
he actually can control and influence more readily than just an outcome or behavior.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I try to be more of a gardener parent. Doesn't always work out.
It's
But
tough.
so the specialization. So this is a super complex. I mean, it's again, we're going through it right now with do we get Jack into a high level soccer club? Obviously, that comes with a high price tag and a high resource requirement in terms of time. I mean, there's required games even at 7, 8 years old for some of these clubs. So but it certainly is becoming kind of the perception that that's the game I have to play in order to get my kid to whatever level of sports they want to play. And again, I think here's the simple yet very difficult answer to this is if it's athlete led. If I go to Jack and I say, here's the obligation. If we sign you up for this soccer club, you're going to have practice 2 days a week, and we're going to be traveling for games on Saturdays and maybe even Sundays. Do you want to play soccer at this level right now? What
Mm-hmm.
we're doing is we're giving him these winter, up here in Michigan, we do these like indoor camps. And so he's going to do a camp with one club team and a second club team here in Ann Arbor. And if he likes it, if he likes the coaches, if we like the coaches, if we like the atmosphere, if he's into it, we'll say, okay, this spring or maybe in the fall, we will try this out. Here's what it will entail. Are you into that? Yes. Okay. Then we're gonna do it. But then
Mm-hmm. Commit
he's
to it.
gonna he's gonna commit to that contract of
Yeah.
whatever, however long that season is at that age. And if he's not, we'll keep doing more of the local AYSO Rec and Ed
Mm-hmm.
stuff. But I still think, and when we talked about this before, before we started the official podcast, is specialization is technically defined, I think, as like narrowing into one, maybe two sports at a certain age. I would discourage that at age 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even if it means going and doing, maybe this is your priority sport, he plays soccer, but we're going to get him into, a little basketball league in the winter just so he gets some exposure to something else, different kids. different movements and skills, different
Mhm.
muscle group development,
Yeah, for sure.
different team versus individual atmospheres. Like you would
Different
get them on a
intensity, like,
different intensity. I
yeah.
mean, soccer is obviously much more difficult than basketball. So,
Whoa. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Now,
but the other thing is get them involved in something that's what we call an open skill versus a closed skill sport, right? So soccer, basketball, hockey, baseball, football, open skill sports means when I compete against somebody, how good they are impacts my performance. If I play tennis against you or Roger Federer, that impacts my
I would
performance.
pay money to see you play Roger Federer in tennis.
Me too. Um, but if
Me
I swim, Trevor, against you or Michael Phelps, that doesn't impact my swim
performance.
time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I got
So,
you.
but getting them involved in something like running or swimming, golf, track, something that is closed skill where they kind of get a sense for like this is on me,
Mm.
and only me. There's a different attentional style. There's a different attentional and mental demands, dynamics, um, that I think is important to also develop from a mental, emotional, cognitive,
Are
emotional
you
standpoint.
putting Jack in some of those closed?
Yeah, he did. So he's done martial arts. He's done gymnastics. I mean, Marlena, my wife, is a all-American swimmer. So
Yeah.
we're
Shout
always
out to
kind of trying
Marlena.
to trying to get him into doing a little swimming. So yeah, we that is the plan.
It's
We will
interesting.
continue to expose him to those kinds of
Yeah,
opportunities.
I love that. I think that the beauty of sport is, I mean, one of the things I always hated those closed kind of. You said closed skill. Is that what you called it?
Hmm.
Closed.
Yeah, me too.
Running. I was like, oh my gosh, why am I running around this track? This is brutal. I want to puke. But on the other end of that commitment of committing to that sport and running track, you're also learning a lot about yourself, like persevering through, physical suffering or pain,
Mhm.
pushing through to a new, getting over a plateau on a time that you never thought you could get past, all those things. Now I look back and say, oh my gosh, if I would have just stuck with even track, like it would have just, I would have been mentally tougher. I'd have been able to run, run for longer and faster, to help. It would have helped these other sports that I loved,
Mhm.
but I just wasn't able to kind of get through that, that mental shift of like, this is sometimes that's the beauty of sports. What lies on the other side of commitment is that growth that happens. But on the front
Mhm.
end, it feels terrible. It feels like, oh, excruciating. Waking up, even waking up to train, early in the morning, 6 in the morning before school, as I got into, middle school, high school, felt so painful because a lot of times I was by myself, but I just didn't do it every day. But I think just
Mhm.
having that closed skill sport where it's on you to even develop, by yourself and just push through and persevere. I think it's a great tool for parents, just to think about.
Yeah, and I think that's where the skill that can be developed from a mental side is, and we've had I've had conversations with your younger brother about this,
Mm-hmm.
is I really in the beginnings move a lot of my athletes away from this very intense goal setting.
Yeah.
Because what we now, I mean, we've known it for a while, but we know about performance is best served when your attention is in the present on things that you control. Goals are neither of those. Right?
Yeah.
Goals are in the future, and we do not control winning the championship, scoring, having 20 and 10,
Yeah.
having 5 assists. So, I get back to goal setting eventually, and that's kind of another conversation. But for the beginning, it's got to be like, okay, what is the value? You talk about commitment, right? Goals are typically associated with motivation, right? I'm motivated to do this, the desire to accomplish something. But values actually do a much better job at committing us to the actions that we need to get to that point. And so if I can commit an athlete to the value of perseverance or dedication or competition or courage or whatever, um, and that commitment is there, and we can define, okay, here's what these behaviors look like. Now getting up at 6 in the morning yes, it feels miserable and it's uncomfortable, but I'm identifying, I'm connecting to the longer term fulfillment and value and benefit that I get out of that. And that's where we get to the, the cliche of, hey, just get comfortable being uncomfortable. People say that to athletes all the time. We tell it to ourselves, coaches, parents, hey, just got to get comfortable being uncomfortable. Well, how do I train that? Well, I train that through an understanding that I have to endure that short-term discomfort of getting up at 6 a.m. or of missing out on the late night high school birthday, party or the party, because I'm committing myself to the actions of this value, and knowing that that feels real, and being able to really intentionally feel that fulfillment afterwards is essential. I can't stand running, Trevor.
Mm.
I absolutely
Ah.
hate it. But after, and I never get a runner's high. Never during running. I'm like, oh, this is awesome. But after a run, I'm like, man, I'm glad I did that. And if
Right.
I didn't have that feeling, like if I couldn't connect to that feeling of how it felt afterwards, I would very rarely be willing to endure the mental and physical discomfort that I do when I think about going for a run.
Yeah. I think
So,
that so I just want to dive a little deeper into this value thing because I love this. Like I think about my values, for HB Elite, I want number one, kids to be super competitive. That's the number one value. As a leader, I want this to kind of filter down. Two, I want there to be joy. I want I love going in the gym and working on my game, or being with my team, and not only competing but just the development and learning that can happen on a court, whether it's footwork or a new move or a triple threat, or learning how to make a better pass on a read. So there's the joy piece, and then there's kind of like the leadership side. I always wanted to be. I didn't really know what the value of leadership or being a leader meant, but to me it was like being authentic. I want to be myself, and I want people I'm just going to be myself, and also, sometimes I was vocal, sometimes I just worked my butt off. Other times I, got emotional and said, "Hey, we got to pick it up," or but that like caring for leadership, helped me as I got older kind of transition from me to, "Hey, what does the team need? What do I have to do today to win this game?" Because, if you're competitive, you want to win. And if you're a leader, you have to be able to serve your team, or serve, be assimilate, and not only can't be about you every single play, or I got to score 40 points and lose. Like, all I wanted to do was kind of win a championship at every level, high school, college, pros. To me, winning was so important, but I learned as I got older, sometimes the team doesn't need you to score 30.
mhm.
Sometimes the team needs you to, to just lock down on defense, be the most vocal guy, make the right pass, dive on the floor, take it, do all those things that as I got older, I was like, I don't care how we win. I can have 10 turnovers and win, and I feel great. That like that endorphin rush of winning is really what drove me.
But let me ask you this question, and then I want to set a number of really great things I want to highlight from the kind of the sports psychology standpoint.
Yeah.
Is when you played in a basketball game, if you think back to even high school, were you more excited or going to get more joy out of a game that you knew was going to be a tight game or tough, or one where you were like, we're going to blow this team out?
Ooh, I mean, I was anxious regardless. I was like, I'm gonna be honest. I always struggled with anxiety, from high school on. So every game felt really important to me. Now, I got more excited and amped up. Like I had to consciously like have a protocol that I would do, like listen to music. I listened to Enya,
Oh yeah,
Orinoco
I
Flow,
remember.
and I would just sit in the bathroom by myself, 45 minutes before the game, and just, you know, visualize, I would read Bible quotes. I would do all these things to just like just have faith in this process.
Hmm.
You've put in the work. So yeah, I get really excited for the big games, but I was still really anxious for for the games that we were probably going to win. Um, but yeah,
But
I
I
think,
think that the difference is like that's where I always ask athletes or people, even parents about that, is that that's the difference between a competitive mindset. Like I want to play a great team.
mhm,
That's more exciting to me.
yeah,
versus like if we play this team, I'm really going to pad those stats. Like, I'm going to get that 30-20.
Yeah.
I'm going to put down 30 points, 20 assists,
Yeah. I'm gonna have a triple
rebounds,
double. Yeah. I never
right?
was thinking about triple doubles and stuff.
And I think that's the difference between being, focusing on the value of competition versus I want to win, but again, there's the goal. I got to get that out of my attentional space.
yeah.
That's not worthy of attentional space, is the winning piece. It's got to be the
Yeah.
competition. So what I wanted to say is, like, when you get those, you got competition, joy, leadership. Like, let's say those are the three values that you're kind of pushing at the Huffman basketball camp.
Hmm.
What is that? We got to know what that means. Like, I think where we fall short a lot of times, and mostly this, I see this in like organizational psychology, is, you get the mission statement, a vision statement, you get these list of values for some small business or corporation,
Hmm.
and then they're like, okay, go be great with those.
right.
Well, what does that mean? What does it
Right.
mean in action to be competitive? What does it mean to act in alignment and execute behaviors or actions or decisions that align me with joy or leadership? I
Hmm.
got to know that. And so for competition, maybe that is, always keeping, making sure your body language is, upright, shoulders back, and noticing when you start to kind of lose that, or when you start to get down on yourself or your teammates and you're yelling at a teammate. Like, maybe those are behaviors you got to look out for. Maybe, even like keeping focus on what you're doing,
Yeah.
not making similar mistakes over and over and over again. Whatever those behaviors are, you got to have those listed out. What does it mean? Like, look, man, running lines on the soccer is not fun. Right? Running hills in high school soccer, that was not fun.
Thanks, Batch.
Yeah, thank you. Shout out. But I remember feeling a lot of enjoyment of, like, wow, my muscles are burning, but like I beat Charlie to the top of the hill.
Yeah.
Or like I know now that we are going to be a fitter team for this weekend's game because
Hmm.
we did this. So
Yeah.
there's still an enjoyment and a fulfillment that's not necessarily fun in the moment, but again, joy. What does that mean?
Yeah.
Leadership's an interesting one because oftentimes when people pick leadership as a value and with the athletes I work with, I'm like, well, what do you mean by leadership? And what they usually end up doing is like defining or describing their other six values. And you're like authentic,
Hmm.
open,
Yeah. Yeah. Right. It's
competitive,
a pretty big umbrella term.
compassion,
Yeah.
vote, communication, like whatever you mean, like leadership, I don't think is
Values. Right.
one set of things,
Yeah.
strictly defined. I think it's you doing your values really well and being willing to put those across, and
Right.
in an
I have to
open,
do, I have
authentic
to
way.
look at, like you're saying, okay, so my value, like I think having this is I did this with an athlete recently too, which makes me feel good because I feel like I'm on the right track. If you have a PhD, you have to know what you're saying. So I'm like, and I just
Sure.
naturally I was like, I didn't know this, but I want the kid to understand, what his really what drives us is coming from within, not from I mean external. Yeah, you could, like you're saying, goals can kind of be this thing in the
Well,
future
it
that I
does, but they burn out quickly. It's like eating sugar.
yeah, it's and so I asked, like what are some what would a value be? And then he said, let's say he said competitiveness. Like you said, okay, I want you to write out, three or four things of what that looks like
Mhm.
in practice, in a game, in your own individual life, day to day. Because if you're truly competitive with, and that's a value you have, you're always essentially trying to win, whether it's Monopoly, whether it's basketball, whether it's soccer. You're like, you love that feeling of that winning gives you. So you can't just show up and be like, I don't want to, I don't really want to put a big effort in today. So does competitiveness look like high effort, in practices and trainings in the weight room and in a lot of these things? Or, like just getting them to like drill down. Do you think
Mhm.
that's a good way to do it? Just drill
Yeah,
down
I
on
need
like,
to know. I need to know behaviors that I can control.
yeah.
I need to know that competitiveness means that I show up 15 minutes before practice starts and just start warming up and shooting free
Mm-hmm.
throws. Or that competitiveness means that, effort's a tough one, right? Because again, what does that mean? Um, but defining it, as soon as you can get some definitions on this is exactly what this looks like, then you can kind of assess, hey, am I doing this? Am I
Mhm.
doing these things that I know are helping me perform at a higher level or train skills more effectively and quicker?
Yeah.
And yeah, I have to know what those mean.
Yeah. What I love the idea of values, because like you said, it's kind of a North Star rather than a, you know, failure. How do you failure if your North Star is I'm competitive and you fail, who cares? You're like, I'm gonna get the next one, I'm gonna get this next play in a
Well,
way if
yeah.
you're competitive. Right. I guess failure is probably one of those things we could talk about for this entire session. Because I feel like kids get um it's it's like I want this outcome of winning, but if I don't get it, what does it do to me?
Hmm.
And I think as a pro athlete, you learn to bounce back from the term failure, which, I don't even think is the right word. It's just a learning experience. What did I learn from
Hmm.
this? How can I improve from this? What process did I not do this week that, maybe I can tweak or improve or adapt? So for me, that competitiveness piece comes in to, bouncing back quickly from setbacks or challenges or obstacles or, as a society likes to say, failures. But really, what
Well,
is failure?
well, exactly. So I think that that's where I mean, nobody's going to know this, but you just put failure in air quotes.
Yeah,
And I
that's
think that
true. I did.
that's
Nobody saw
important
that.
because I think that it's a mistake to call mistakes or losses failure.
Yeah.
Um, I just long story short, I just facilitated a class where four world-class ultra endurance athletes presented. I mean, these guys are doing things like called the Biggs Backyard Last Man Standing. They run a 4.5 mile loop every hour until there's only one person, 24 hours a day.
What?
Yeah, a 4.5 mile loop, and you have an hour. If you've completed 40 minutes, you have time to rest, even sleep for 5-10 minutes, get back up, do it again. The
Wow.
guy that Harvey Lewis, look him up.
Uh-huh. All right.
He just won it. He went 4.5 days. He ran over 450 miles
Oh my gosh.
in doing this. And everything he talked about was like encouragement for myself, inspiration. He helped others early on. He coordinated and made it collaborative for a while. Um, and he talked about, he's like, look, there's winning is lots of things. Failure is only if I don't do my values, only if I can define like, hey, I chose not to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's failure. But
Yeah.
defining or labeling a loss or a mistake as failure I think is a we gotta redefine
Short-sighted.
that.
Yeah.
Is short sighted for sure. Um,
Yeah.
so
And when you've worked with athletes in the past, or families and parents in terms of, give me some some examples of things that you've kind of like a case study that you've worked with an athlete or a family. I know that you have worked with people and athletes that I know, and I think the beauty of the mental game, understanding the mental game is usually the probably the most important thing to really develop and have, air quote success, at higher and higher levels, because the higher and higher levels you go, that mental piece becomes more and more important. So talk about some of the case studies that you've seen play out, what the problems were when you started, and then kind of how working together and working through some of the mental performance side of things.
yeah, two come to mind immediately. One is, and this is standard for every athlete, is this change of focus from all of the not of the things that you can't control. Like this is a basketball player. Turnovers, points, assists, rebounds, wins, losses. When every session when we talk about how'd you play today, how'd you play this weekend, it's never we don't that doesn't even come up. I don't even ask what the score was. We don't talk about how many points they scored. It's and we have these defined, right? These are abstract, but we have them defined as like attitude, hustle, effort, teamwork, Like these are the things I'm asking about, and these are the things that we're focusing on.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do these things, and how well did you do them, and how can we improve, and where do we need to? And that's all we talk. I never ask them if they won the tournament. Nothing. I don't want to know anything. I want to, but
Yeah.
I don't ask anything about that. And so the conversation, what happens in their brain is like they slowly learn that, oh, this is what's more important,
Mm-hmm.
and this is what I can control, and this is what success is, and this is
Mm-hmm.
what success can be.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's a huge success trap of like needing to win, because if you win, winning becomes more of an expectation, and now it's not even exciting or happy or joyful anymore. It's just expected. And then
Yeah.
when you lose, the cliff is all that much, the ravine is all that much deeper. So that's one, just a total shift in how we define success and what we choose to focus on. Now, this is a younger athlete. We still do that, but in a little more complex ways. If the athlete is, in college, professional. The other one is a college athlete. And we've been working together for quite a while. So luckily, because what happened recently was their team was, awarded a bid into the national tournament that's starting very soon. They did not get the conference accolades that they thought they deserved or should get, but now still have to go. So now there's all these thoughts around, well, my coach didn't advocate for me. They
Mm-hmm.
don't think I'm not valuable as valuable as I thought to the team. Why haven't my teammates come up and said, "Man, you got robbed. You should have been on this and this team. You should have been
Mm-hmm.
MVP of this."
Mm-hmm.
Like all of this is now just clogging that attentional space. And basically, what we have to start talking about, and what we did talk about, is you still have an NCAA tournament to play in. You need to, and now we got to engage with the mindfulness practices of staying present, what I call cognitive diffusion, which is you're not going to eradicate, like thoughts of like that are going to show up, but I don't have to get like jump in the stew on those thoughts and
Mm-hmm.
allow them to kind of put their tentacles in and take hold in my attentional space and my energy, because now I'm just wasting that attentional space is limited. And if I allow my coach doesn't trust me and doesn't like me, or I should have been this or I should have been that, it can't be about the accolade. It's funny, I brought up to her because she's a current college athlete, and I was like, oh, so you remember that movie Cool Runnings? And she was like, no idea what you're talking about. And I was like,
way
what?
to way to date yourself, bro.
For sure. But then I was like, listen, there's a part of that where he's like, listen, winning a gold medal is great, but if you're not enough without it, you'll never be enough with it. And I was like, look,
That's a
you
great
didn't get
quote.
these.
Say that again.
If he was referring to a gold medal in the Olympics, but if you're not enough without the medal, then you'll never be enough with it. Right. So you got to think enough of yourself, how you perform, what you do on the field, enough that if you get the awards, super. But if you're not enough, if you don't have enough of that confidence or ability to perform at a high level without the awards, then even getting them doesn't, you're not going
Yeah.
to be enough with them.
Yeah.
So, that conversation was just about, okay, all of that is here. So here's all of that is true. Maybe it's all true. Maybe your coach does hate you. Maybe she doesn't think you're as good. Maybe your teammate, maybe you aren't. Like, even if those things are true, are they going to help you play at a high level this coming weekend? The answer to that is absolutely not.
No.
So whether it's true or not, we have to engage in the skills that she's been practicing for the last 6-8 months in order to move those thoughts out of the attentional space. Now I was like, okay, well, what emotions are you feeling? Well, a lot of anger. Great. You know what? That can be a really facilitative emotion,
Oh, I love anger. I had a
right?
chip on my shoulder for most of
Yeah. I
my.
said, look, if that's gonna get you this edge, that's like you go into a hard tackle and you're like proving to your teammates and your coaches that you should have gotten those awards, great. Do it.
Yeah. That's called
Anything,
playing with a chip on your, like if you have a
yeah.
chip on your shoulder as an athlete, that really just means, like you're using something that either, like you're saying, accolade, or some your coach doesn't like you. Every athlete is going to go through this, like at every level of sport. on the bench, not really playing or not really liked by the coach. I've had that. I've had to be a, supportive teammate where I wasn't playing, and that's really hard. But I was also the MVP and this.
When? Just kidding.
Yeah, well, it's Phoenix Suns, NBA. I hope you can imagine that, a kid from Petoskey, Michigan, going into Phoenix Suns with Stephon Marbury, Starberry as they call them. I matched up with Stephon Marbury every day, and I'm just thinking like, yep, this guy's really good. He's really good. I got a lot of room for improvement, but and the coaches didn't care about me, yada yada. But that happened earlier in my career too. And you take that, say, oh, nobody thinks I'm gonna be good enough, or nobody thinks I'm this is possible. I mean, I went against this my whole career. I got angry about that and used that as a chip on my shoulder to stay motivated, to play with that edge, where I'm like, you're not
Well,
gonna,
what you're bringing up, Trevor, is at the core of the more what we call acceptance commitment approaches to sport performance than the
uh-huh.
more cognitive behavioral ones, which is I always use air quotes when I identify a thought as positive or negative, or an emotion as positive or negative, because that's irrelevant.
Yeah.
I do not care whether a thought or an emotion is positive or negative. Is that thought or emotion going to help you perform at a higher level? So this athlete that I was just talking about, she probably had the thought, I am the best player on this team. And she is.
Mm-hmm.
But that thought fusing in her attentional space has now created, now that she didn't get the accolades, has created a potential for unhelpful
Yeah.
behavior and
It's
performance.
a narrative that affects her
So, but it
performance.
sounds like an awfully positive thought, right? That's a confident thought. I'm the best player on this team. But if I allow that to kind of get stuck in my attentional space and that's what's in
Mm-hmm.
there, then when I don't get the accolades or something happens or I make a mistake, again, the cliff is steeper and deeper.
So what do you tell her?
So,
Like, let's breathe through this. Let's do some mindfulness. How do
well, she's worked this. Yes, I can, but only because she's already done the work. Here's where I think we also. I'm going to get up on a soapbox for just a second.
Yeah.
Here's where I think we make a big mistake from the mental standpoint, is we think that we can just in the moment drop down and do these like mental push-ups and then have the strength to do whatever we need to do without having practiced it. And
Mm-hmm.
the physical representation of this is like you ask me to come over to your apartment and help you move a big heavy couch. So I get there, I pick up the couch, I get about 3 steps, it's too heavy, I drop it. I drop down and do 30 push-ups thinking, okay, that's going to help me. No, that's going to make it worse. I'm going to
Yeah.
get more fatigued in that moment.
Yeah.
If I leave and say, all right, hold tight, I go for 3 months and I hit the gym and I build those muscles, now I can come back
Right.
and help you move that couch. But we understand that from a physical standpoint that would not be helpful. We don't understand that mentally, that unless somehow through experience I have stumbled upon the ability to focus or to be confident or to be motivated, that's great. But mostly like we don't know how to do those things, and it's a skill. We have to
So
train that. So yes,
yeah.
we've then worked on like, okay, now let's work through a diffusion process. Okay, what are the thoughts incorporated in this that are going to help you perform? Well, the chip on the shoulder type thoughts, right?
Yeah.
My coach
Jet
didn't
fuel.
believe
I
in
need
me.
jet fuel motivation, baby.
Yeah,
Let's
my
go.
coach didn't believe in me. Okay, how's that? Let's break it down. Is that helping you? Yeah, actually, in this way, it does.
Mm-hmm.
Once I diffuse from it, I'm like, okay, here's this thought that my coach wasn't supporting me in this process. Well, I'm going to prove it to her. Right? I'm no good for my team. Nope, that's not cutting the raw.
Yeah.
That one's no good. I got to really separate from that one and just allow that one to kind of leave my attentional space. But that was months of practice, and then
Mm-hmm.
yes, some mindfulness practices to say, okay, your best bet at performing at a high level is to be in the present. I'm going to guarantee you that. So you got to work and trust. She's got a fantastic pre-performance routine. You got to trust that routine, execute it on game on
What is
even on
that?
in
What is that like?
practices.
What is that routine? That protocol for focus and being present?
Well, it's the thing is like it's
Different for
got to be
everybody.
subjective, right? It's very subjective. What I'll say is that in general, it can start with stuff that's a little more internally focused,
Uh
like
huh.
some imagery or some self-talk or some, process of recognizing and identifying, acknowledging thoughts and emotions. But as you get closer to game time, attention should move outward so that by the time you're on the field and the whistle blows, you're there out in the present external environment.
Mm-hmm.
So, they get more, the mindfulness practices get kind of closer to when you're stretching and you're warming up and you're out on the field. And then you got to anchor attention, you drop anchor and connect really hardcore into the present moment. And now you're there ready to play.
Can I even go a little deeper? Is there breath work? Is there breathing? Are you
It depends on what you're
breathing for
trying to.
5,
So
let
breathing
go
is one
for?
of those things, Trev, that it's. Am I training some physiological response? Right? There's this very fancy theory called polyvagal theory where I can train some physiological systems to still operate at a high level during high levels of stress, physical stress and emotional stress. Way more complicated than that, but let's stick with that. So I can train those kinds of things again ahead of time. Or am I just using my breath to anchor me into something that's in the present that I can control? Now that's breath work that
Mm-hmm.
I have all of my athletes are going to practice during, before a game,
Mm-hmm.
because, breathing is good, but we're not manipulating breathing. We're not saying, oh, I have to like do diaphragmatic breathing. I'm just using the breath as an anchor that's in the present within my control. So yeah, breath work is probably a part of some of that, but from the mindfulness perspective, a body scan is probably more likely what I'm going to have somebody do during like warming up or stretching. Because now I get to know that now this is task oriented. It's like, okay, my right hamstring is a little more like a little tenser. I got a little tighter. I need to do an extra stretch on that.
Mm-hmm.
Or my hips are feeling a little. I need to get up and do some, some high knees or some whatever.
Yeah, some hip
exercise.
mobility drills. Yeah.
Yeah, something. So, but I want that body scan so that they're still staying present. They're still paying attention to some like physiological proprioceptive awareness, and then make a behavioral change if necessary. Stretching, doing something extra.
Oh my
But
gosh, I could talk
got
about
to
this
lock
all
in the
day.
present.
Do you feel like athletes that are aware of we were kind of ego suspension, where you're able to look at your ego in a way that it's like, okay, yeah, I want this, I want to perform well, I want to score 20, I want to go take this ball to the hoop. You need ego in some ways to drive, to take risk, right? Because if you were completely egoless, you probably wouldn't do anything for yourself.
Mm-hmm.
um
Yep.
and then, in terms of looking at athletes in that way, as I was saying, as I got older, my ego, that pendulum shifted where my ego led everything. It seemed to lead. I was always a good teammate, but I was also very like rogue at times, like I would just do what I needed to do.
But I would argue, Trevor, that the context, because there's a philosophy that underlies everything I do called functional contextualism. You were still trying to get like a bigger, like play in a better league, get a better like, okay, so you need it. So that ego orientation of, still being a good teammate, still having the kind of, I want the team to do well, but like, look, I have to get mine because I'm my goal is I have these that I want to play at these higher leagues or in the NBA or whatever. Okay, I don't think that and I don't think you're saying this necessarily, but it's not wrong to think that way. You just have to you have to have, is it functional? Is the most functional for what I want to accomplish in my life in this particular context at this particular time?
Yeah. I think as I got older, I was just a better teammate in general. I was more of a facilitator of winning. Even though when I was younger, I won a lot too. I mean, your roles shift,
Mm-hmm.
that's, I guess, that adaptability of being like aware of your ego saying like, hey, maybe this game, I don't, I have I have a 6'11" guy switching on every screen. This is going to be really hard for me to have the same. I cannot have this identical points and shooting percentage and all the, stats, because the game's different. So, but being aware of like, okay, I can shift here. I'm adaptable in terms of how I help the team win. I don't, I can, I can just take a charge. I can play harder defense. I can use my energy in different ways. As I got older, that listening to that negative self-talk, I would just look at it and be like, why, like that's not helping. Or, I've I've put in time. I've been doing this for, I've had winning experiences in my life. This thought right now is not serving me, So,
Mhm. Well, I
um,
think that's the tough part, right? Is our brain gives us information and we're like, oh, that must be true, or it must be, I must have to,
yeah,
or I have to, or like, oh no, I have to eradicate that.
it
Well,
interprets, your left brain, right, interprets it as reality, even though it's not even true for a second. Like, like, oh, you're not a winner, or you're not gonna, this free throw is too big, this moment's too, like you have these little fearful thoughts come in. But then, as I got older, I'm like, where, how is this even possible? I've literally won, you know, league championships, high school state championships, college MAC championships, I've overachieved in all these ways, but yet I still have this little voice that's like,
well, that's the little imposter syndrome thing, right?
yeah,
And I absolutely detest that title because it
it,
makes it feel like something that, I mean, I'm not aware of many syndromes, but they're not good.
yeah,
And
carpal
they make
tunnel.
it feel like only like a very small percentage of the population have these syndromes.
Mm-hmm.
Imposter syndrome is better defined as sorry, it's like the normal human brain.
It's just ego, right? It's like,
Like it's gonna like, and
are you
this is, and
ready?
I
Are you enough? Are you
this
good?
is, the idea of a comfort zone is an interesting, has been a new, like, something that I actually intentionally apply with my athletes. Like, look, if something falls outside your comfort zone, do you really expect your brain to be overly like optimistic and supportive about it? I don't
Wait,
think
say
so.
that again. Say that one more time.
So if I try to do something like,
Like
let's
you're
say I'm going
making
to
a
go do my
circle.
first public, yeah, I'm making a circle. That's my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Sorry, right? This is my comfort zone.
Yeah.
Um, if I choose a behavior like my first public speaking engagement, someone's asked me to give a commencement speech somewhere, whatever.
Yeah.
That's outside my comfort zone. Am I really like going to expect my brain to be like, oh, you're going to be awesome at that? This is going to go really well.
Right.
No, until you, again, back to the values, until you expand that comfort zone by doing those
Mm-hmm.
actions and practicing and preparing and being willing to take risks, then slowly your comfort zone expands, and then your brain catches up afterwards to say, oh yeah, you're going to be good at that.
Yeah, so like let's say free throw shooting, right? I want to be a closer at the line at the end of games in these tense moments. I'm a point guard, I'm a guard, I'm a big man, whatever. Some players just they don't feel that's outside their comfort zone. Like they don't want the ball in the end of those games,
Mhm.
And
Well, then
it's
they're keeping that comfort zone small is the problem, right?
so what would you say? Like, okay, what's the behaviors that now we can start getting better at close, ending games, shooting a high free throw percentage? Or, would it be, oh, I got to make 10 in a row at the end of every practice? That's a lot of pressure. If I don't, I have to do something that I don't really want to do. Would you say putting that mental pressure on yourself in practices and player development is one way to do it? Or
Yeah,
would it,
experience. So there's a couple of reasons why we lack confidence, right? Lack of experience and lack of skill are two, right? We got to do those things, right? We have
Mhm.
to build that. But the rest are like this, like harsh self judgments, preoccupation with fear, and uh, lofty expectation, like unrealistic expectations.
Mhm.
Like those are the things we have to address from a mental standpoint to say, okay, how can I just manage my attention and my preparation and my self-talk to be reassuring about preparation, not this fluffy self-talk that's like, I'm the best free throw shooter in the world. I'm not interested in that.
Mhm.
I'm interested in, hey, I closed out every practice this week with 20 made free throws,
Mhm.
and then just draw my attention into the present external environment. That's what I can do to do that, to build the actions of confidence so that later on my brain catches up and um, feels that sense of confidence.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it happens at every level, right? You see pro
Yeah.
athletes choke, you see
Mhm.
college athletes choke, you see,
But it's funny, that I'm sure you've watched The Last Dance. Um, but in the last episode of The Last Dance about Jordan, some biographer, a friend of his, it's almost a throwaway line, like it, but he said what made Michael Jordan the greatest of all time was not that he could like jump high and dunk a basketball. It was that he was a mystic at staying in the present. He would always say, "Why would I fear a shot I haven't taken yet?"
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Yeah.
like, wow. Like
Yeah.
if everybody could just press that Jordan button,
Yeah.
and it's not a cockiness. It's just like, why? I haven't even taken a shot yet, and I'm already afraid that I'm going to miss it.
Yeah.
So he had this ability or skill to just stay so fully focused in the present moment
Hmm.
that nothing that the preoccupation with fear, the expectations of the future, and how what am I going to make the game-winning shot? Um,
Yeah.
Never entered his brain.
That's crazy.
So
That's why he was the goat. I mean, we don't have to debate that, but he
I mean,
is.
I'll be bad. Obviously, basketball's not my number one
What?
sport. You want to talk about
Like
Messi,
five
Ronaldo?
eight?
Now I got you. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
we could talk about this all day, Trev. I'm sure, but
I know
I actually got to
and
get
I
going
think we
soon.
we are at a we are at a we went a little longer. Gosh, time flew when you talk about the ego and
I
values.
don't know.
Well, John, thanks for having us. Tell us how we can find you at Blend Health, and thanks for being a HB marketing sponsor and
Yeah, oh, of course, we love
with
it.
Blend Health.
So blend is spelled a little funky. It's spelled without the E in there, so it's just capital B, capital L, capital N, capital D. But it's just www.blnd dot or sorry blndhealth.com.
Yeah.
So www.blendhealth.com. You can check out all the different services. We got a whole host of different things that we do. Um, a lot of our even therapists, if you're talking about more the mental health side, are former athletes, Division I swimmers and softball players and so forth. So you can check us out there. Um,
Yeah, man. I think
Instagram, same thing at Blend Health.
yeah. What about do people just reach out to you on the website if they want to consult with you and
Yeah, I mean, you can
just
also just email. It's John Evans at blendhealth.com.
John
You can email
Evans,
me directly.
like it sounds.
Like it sounds. It's an easy one.
Well, thanks, Cuz,
With an H.
for jumping on the HB podcast, and we look forward to having you on the next session. And I learned a lot today, so thank you.
Thanks, cuz.
All
Appreciate
right,
it.
man. Have a great day, brother.
All right, bye.
Yeah.